Today we're going to fix the rear suicide doors on this Ford F-150 extended cab. Now these doors are known to break. There's a cable system inside these doors that operate the latch mechanisms. There's a latch at the top of the door and another latch at the bottom of the door with the handle in the middle, and they're connected by cables. These cables have little grommets on the end of them, and these grommets are made out of plastic that deteriorates over time. And so this is a high mileage truck, and these grommets have deteriorated. They've broken as a result of deterioration, and they have allowed the cables to loosen and no longer allow proper amount of tension to release those latch mechanisms, allowing the doors to open. So we have to replace those grommets. There's a neat kit available online called the Ford Door Cable Latch Repair Kit. This consists of these little aluminum grommets that go on the end of the cables. You'll need one kit for each door. There's 4 grommets per kit. In this video, I'm replacing the grommets on one door. So there's a handle to the door. You can see the handle no longer does anything. So with the door closed, because you can't open it, your first step is to remove the paneling on the inside. Remove the paneling on the top. There's one big plastic piece that goes around the rear window. This piece will come off with little effort. I just started at the corner, was able to get my finger in there, and from there I'm able to pop the whole thing out. There's basically some little metal fasteners that hold this on. Once you've got the top plastic piece removed, bottom plastic piece is simply held on with 2 screws, a nut, and a little plastic fastener on the other end. The plastic fastener is probably going to break. It broke on both of the doors on mine. You can get these plastic fasteners. It's a simple sort of push-in type fastener for an automotive thing. You can get these at Lowe's in their specialty hardware section. There's an automotive section, little drawers and everything. It's got the little pieces in it. And other than that, these bolts hold this on. You take these bolts off, those fasteners off, and the bottom part of the door just has these little slots with these little hangers. It hangs onto these slots on the bottom. So you pull the panel up and then pull the panel out, and it comes right out. And then once you've got the bottom panel removed, you should have some sort of plastic protective piece on the inside, dust cover thing. I simply peeled that down on the top and peeled it up on the bottom. And then I started by doing the latch on the top. To do this, I had to release the cable that runs to the top latch. I used a pair of angled pliers. These are super handy tools. If you don't have an angled plier, get one. The cable hooks into the latch mechanism via a little plastic fastener. This fastener has 2 little expansion points on it that can be squeezed together, and then the fastener can be pushed back out through the hole. And then once that cable was released, I pushed it up back through the door towards the top part of the door. And then I moved to the top part of the door, and part of the rubber seal goes over this latch. That rubber seal is held on by 2 more plastic fasteners that slot into holes. It's also helpful to use a flathead screwdriver to help get that started. And then I moved the pliers in there and was able to get on both sides of the fastener and pull it out without breaking it. There's 2 fasteners on there. Pull both of those out of the holes, and you should be able to reuse those. These did not break for me. And then move that rubber trim aside. And then you have access. There's 3 bolts that hold this latch on to the door. These are T20 Torx bits that hold the latch on. There's also some thread locker on these bolts, so be careful of that. They're going to require a bit of pressure to get these moving. Just do it nice and slow, and be careful not to strip the heads on these bolts. And also beware that when you're trying to move the cable up, there is a little fastener that holding the cable to the door inside the door just below the window. It's a little yellow piece. I was able to work my fingers in there and release that piece from the door, and this will help you. This will give you the room you need to pull the latch out from the door to work on it. And then the latch itself, you can pull it free out of the door towards you, and then once you've got it out, you'll have access to the old rubber grommet, the old plastic rubber grommet, and you can break that grommet off, what's left of it, remove it. I use some pliers to do that. This top latch also requires you to pry or bend the metal on the latch mechanism up a little bit, which will allow you to put the new grommet into the latch mechanism. And then once you've got it in, you can use some pliers to bend that piece back down in place. It should be flat with the latch mechanism. Once you've got the old grommet piece off, you're going to notice that the cable has a bit of a rough surface on there where it mated to the old grommet. You're going to want to clean that cable up. You can use some sort of blade, or I used a combination of a blade and a metal file to clean this area up and smooth it out a little bit so that the new metal grommet will slide onto the cable without too much trouble. It's a fairly simple procedure to slide the new metal grommet on. It should slide all the way down until the cable reaches almost near the top part of the grommet. You should be able to see that through the little slot in the grommet. There's a groove on the top part of the grommet. This groove fits into the slot of the latch mechanism. Slide into that slot. You probably will need some pliers to help force it all the way onto the slot. Once it's on there, you can use those same pliers to squeeze or to bend the latch mechanism back into place. And then you put the latch mechanism back onto the door, put your 3 screws back on, tighten it down. And then you go back down to the latch mechanism at the door. You'll pull the cable back down through the door and through the latch mechanism. Pull the cable out so you can remove the old grommet on this end of the cable. And again, clean up the cable with a file or some sort of blade and put on your new grommet the same way as you did on the top one. That's different on the bottom part of the cable is that this grommet slides onto a different slot on the latch mechanism for the door handle. This is on the back side of the latch mechanism, and it's a little bit harder to get to because it's still inside the door. So I was able to get it started with my fingers and then force it the rest of the way on using the angled pliers. Once you've got the grommet on, you're going to need to reattach the end of the cable with a little fastener back into that little hole that we took it out of originally when we first started this procedure. Then moving on to the latch mechanism on the bottom of the door. Again, this has 3 Torx head screws holding it in place. One of the screws is covered up by the rubber seal on the door. Just push this seal aside to get access to that last Torx screw. Remove the 3 screws. Again, these are going to be a little tight and difficult to get off or difficult to get started because they've got the thread locker on them. So once you've got the mechanism removed, pull it out free from the door to give you access to the grommet. Take off the old grommet, put on a new grommet. And this grommet was fairly easy to get in place. The grommet slides into is easy to access on the bottom latch, and you can pop it all the way in using some pliers. And then once you've done that, reinstall the latch mechanism back into the door, put your 3 Torx screws back on, and tighten them down, and you're good to go. So your first step is to release the cable on the door handle mechanism in the middle of the door. The end of the cable is an adjustable threaded piece, sort of a brass looking piece that threads into a plastic piece. The plastic piece is made as white and yellow. There's a little yellow release mechanism. You can pull the yellow release towards you, and then you'll have access to that brass screw part on the end of the cable, and you can simply just pull that brass part out, and you'll have and then the cable will be free. And then once you've done that, and then do the same thing, clean up the grommet, take the old grommet off, put the new grommet on. And again, on this part of the cable, the grommet part fits into a slot on the back side of the handle mechanism, and so it's not easy to reach. I had to get it started with my fingers, and then again use the angle pliers to help push it the rest of the way in place. Once you've got that in place, you can reattach the end of the cable, that brass screw part, onto the little plastic piece, and then close that little yellow door, and you're back in business. You may need to adjust the cable using that brass screw to get everything working correctly, but you can test it out at this point, and your door should open and close the way it's supposed to. If it doesn't, adjust those brass screws. You may need to adjust the one on the top latch and or the one on the bottom latch. Once you've got those adjusted correctly, you've got a new door again, a new working door. So go ahead, once you've got everything working correctly, put your door panels back in place, put the little plastic dust cover back over all the mechanisms there, and then put your door panels back on, and you are all done.